deep dive into the hidden dynamics behind modern relationships. We often claim we're searching for love. But pause for a moment. Strip away the romance, the longing, the fantasy, and ask yourself honestly, is it truly love you seek, or is it the feeling of being wanted, of being chosen, of mattering to someone enough that you finally feel like you matter to yourself? At first glance, these things may seem indistinguishable, but the distinction is critical because one leads to connection and the other leads to dependency. Love, in its truest form, is not about getting. It is about giving. It is an act of offering, of stepping outside the self to recognize, honor, and care for the reality of another. Validation, by contrast, is not about the other person at all. It's about what they represent. Proof. Proof that we are enough. Proof that we are not invisible. Proof that we are still desirable, relevant, or safe. When love is distorted by the craving for validation, it ceases to be love in any real sense. It becomes a transaction dressed in intimacy. It becomes an attempt to receive something we were never taught to carry within ourselves. When love becomes a disguised demand. In many modern relationships, what masquerades as love is not a desire to share oneself, but a subtle hope to be filled. We don't come to the relationship saying, "Here I am, whole, willing to walk beside you." We come saying, "Please show me I'm enough. Please be the one who finally chooses me." There is a quiet desperation in this plea. It is not loud. It often looks like romance. It may even feel like love, intense, all-consuming, euphoric. But it is not rooted in freedom. It is rooted in fear. And that fear is rarely conscious. Most people aren't aware of what they're doing when they cling so tightly to the idea of love. They simply feel an emptiness they don't know how to name, and they reach for the nearest person who might silence it. The hidden hunger beneath love. For a large number of people, love has become a symbolic solution to an inner ache. They say they're seeking connection, but in reality, they're looking for relief. They want someone to step into the void that was carved years ago. Not to walk with them, but to fix them. Not to journey beside them, but to soothe the wound that never quite closed. This wound is often invisible, but its symptoms are everywhere. The anxiety when someone doesn't reply fast enough. The panic when affection feels distant. The sudden collapse when a relationship ends, as if it took your entire sense of identity with it. Where did that wound come from? Usually it didn't begin in adulthood. It began in the fragile, formative years, when your worth was still being written into your body. Maybe you were rejected outright. Maybe you were abandoned physically or emotionally. Or maybe it was more subtle. You grew up in a home where love had to be earned. Through obedience, through performance, through being useful, impressive, quiet, agreeable. In such an environment, love becomes conditional. And from such soil, a quiet but deadly belief takes root. If I am not chosen, I have no value. If I am not pleasing, I will be abandoned. If I am not needed, I will be forgotten. The adult who keeps trying to heal a childhood wound. And so, without realizing it, we grow into adults who seek in others what we never cultivated in ourselves. We crave admiration. We cling to affirmation. We confuse being noticed with being safe. We mistake being desired with being loved. But this emotional logic is broken. It cannot hold the weight of a real relationship. When you need someone to choose you in order to feel secure, you place your entire self-worth into their hands. And whether they stay or leave, Whether they love or withdraw, you are no longer free. You are now a hostage to their gaze. The loop that never ends. This creates a tragic loop. We feel insecure, so we seek validation. We receive a moment of relief, so we attach. But the relief fades, so we panic. We chase the feeling again, so we overextend, overexplain, overgive. And when the other person pulls away, we don't just feel rejected. We feel erased. Because in this cycle, the other person was never just a person. They were your emotional anchor, your proof of worth, your substitute for inner security. And the danger of this cycle is that even when someone genuinely loves you, it may never feel like enough. Because what you're asking them to fix was never theirs to fix in the first place. The illusion of completion. Modern culture relentlessly reinforces a single message: that love is the missing piece, that somewhere out there, someone exists whose presence will dissolve your confusion, fulfill your dreams, and make your emotional storms disappear. It's in every romantic film that ends with a kiss and a fade to black. It's in every song that claims, "You're my everything." It's in every meme that promises, "When you meet the one, you'll just know." But what these messages don't show, what they never tell you, is that relying on another person to complete you isn't love. It's dependency with better lighting. This story of completion is emotionally seductive. It offers comfort without responsibility. It lets us believe that our healing will come from the outside in, that we don't have to do the hard work of self-discovery, self-forgiveness, or self-stability, because they will do it for us. But this fantasy has consequences. When we expect a partner to complete us, we're not entering a relationship to give. We're entering it to receive, to be filled, to be saved, to outsource the work of emotional wholeness to someone who, like us, is probably still trying to figure themselves out. This is how relationships become fragile. Not because love is weak, but because the expectations placed upon it are impossible. The trap of magical thinking. The cultural myth of completion sets you up for heartbreak, again and again. It tells you that you are half a person until someone chooses you. It turns love into a scavenger hunt for worthiness, and every time you think you've found the one, you expect them to fix what life broke. But that's not their role, and it's not their fault when they can't carry it. No one, no matter how loving, stable, or generous, can be the answer to your existential ache. They can walk with you. They can support you. They can mirror your light. But they cannot complete what was never missing from the start. Real love versus emotional highs. As long as you believe someone else is the answer to your emptiness, you will live in cycles of brief euphoria, followed by inevitable collapse. You will idealize quickly, then panic when reality sets in. You'll chase chemistry like it's connection. You'll confuse infatuation with depth. And you'll find yourself exhausted, again and again, wondering, why does love never seem to last for me? Why do I always end up feeling alone, even when I'm not? The answer may be painful, but it is liberating. Because you are not broken. You've just been sold a broken narrative. The invitation. What if love wasn't about completion at all? What if it was about companioning, two whole people walking side by side, each responsible for their own healing, their own growth, their own soul? This is a deeper kind of love, quieter, slower, less dramatic perhaps, but infinitely more sustainable. It does not promise to erase your wounds, but it does allow someone to hold your hand while you face them. It does not rescue you, but it does remind you you're not walking alone, and in the end, that may be a far more sacred kind of connection than any fantasy ever sold to you by a movie. Dependency is not desire. It's easy to confuse the two. Desire feels electric. It lights up the nervous system. It makes your heart race and your thoughts spiral. But not all desire is rooted in love. Some of it is rooted in fear, in loneliness, in the longing to be touched. Not out of joy, but out of panic. Many relationships begin with intensity and urgency, and we call it passion. But urgency is not always love. It's often avoidance. A way to escape being alone with yourself. A way to silence the inner noise with another person's voice, skin, or attention. When you need someone to be close to you so you can survive being with yourself, you're not loving them. You're leaning on them like a crutch. You're not building intimacy. You're building escape routes. And over time, that dependency doesn't soften. It hardens. It makes you resentful when they cannot meet your unspoken expectations. It makes you anxious when they need space. It turns love into a trap, one that neither of you can breathe in. The disguised addiction. Dependency is not inherently evil. We're human. We need each other. We are wired for attachment, connection, and touch. But when your emotional survival depends on another person's availability, presence, or approval, you've crossed from connection into captivity. What's dangerous about emotional dependency is that it wears the costume of love. It says all the right things. It feels like deep devotion. But it's actually a need to regulate your nervous system through another person's behavior. It's not, I want to love you. It's, I need you, so I don't fall apart. In this way, the relationship becomes less about the person and more about the emotional relief they provide. Just like a drug, a culture that encourages neediness. And this confusion isn't just personal, it's cultural. We are constantly fed messages that normalize emotional dependence. You complete me. I can't live without you. You're my reason to wake up. These phrases are celebrated in songs, films, wedding vows. But when taken literally, they foster an emotionally immature vision of love. Because if someone is your reason for existing, then their absence is your annihilation. And that's not romantic. It's dangerous. Love is not meant to drown you in someone else's identity. It is meant to strengthen your capacity to stand side by side, whole and unshaken. Together, yet distinct. The cost of misunderstood desire. When we confuse dependency for desire, we build relationships on shaky ground. At first, the attention feels intoxicating. Every message, every glance, every touch is a hit of reassurance. But as soon as it fades, when the texts slow, when the mood shifts, when the silence grows, your self-worth begins to disintegrate. And suddenly, you're no longer in love. You're in withdrawal. The worst part? You start believing that this roller coaster is love, that the anxiety is proof of depth, that the instability is proof of how much you care. But it's not. It's just trauma reenactment. It's an old wound being reopened by new hands, and until you heal that wound, every relationship will feel like a repetition of the last. The roots of emotional immaturity. Emotional immaturity doesn't always look like childish behavior. It's not about throwing tantrums or acting impulsively. Often, it's far more subtle, hidden beneath competence, charm, even success. It reveals itself not in how we speak about love, but in how we live it. At the heart of emotional immaturity is a simple truth. We were never taught how to carry the weight of our own hearts. Many of us grew up in environments where emotions were either ignored, invalidated, or misunderstood, not out of cruelty, but out of generational unawareness. You may have been praised for being strong, but never guided through sadness. You may have been told to get over it, but never shown how. So you developed survival strategies instead of emotional skills. You learned to hide your pain behind performance. You learned to charm instead of communicate. You learned to please instead of express. And above all, you learned to associate vulnerability with danger, not intimacy. Love without structure collapses. Emotional immaturity is not the absence of love. It's the absence of structure to sustain it. You might deeply care for someone, but without the capacity to regulate your emotions, to listen without defensiveness, to hold discomfort without reacting, love becomes unstable. It burns bright and burns out fast. Mature love requires emotional muscle, not just to stay when it's hard, but to stay present when it's uncomfortable, to listen even when your pride flares, to speak even when your voice shakes, to own your triggers without turning them into weapons. Most people don't fail at love because they lack feeling. They fail because they lack the internal framework to hold what love demands. The fear of being known. Another sign of emotional immaturity is this: we want to be loved, but we're terrified of being known. Because to be known is to be exposed. It's to risk someone seeing not just your beauty, but your fear. Not just your strength, but your need. And when you haven't made peace with your own imperfections, you will treat every moment of emotional honesty as a potential threat. This is why so many people hide behind roles: the caretaker, the achiever, the peacemaker, the rebel. We show the version of ourselves that feels safest. And then we wonder why no one ever truly sees us. The truth is they can't, because we never let them. The path forward, from avoidance to capacity. Emotional maturity doesn't mean you're always calm, always composed, always right. It means you've developed the capacity to stay present through discomfort, without needing to escape, blame, or collapse. It means you can feel jealousy without controlling the other. You can admit fear without shame. You can hear hard truths without shutting down. You can be disappointed without destroying connection. And most importantly, it means you know the difference between needing comfort and demanding rescue. Because mature love is not a rescue mission. It's a sacred space between two people who have chosen to grow, not just together, but as individuals who no longer expect the other to carry what is ultimately their own to bear. Why relationships often feel like a return to childhood. Have you ever noticed how certain moments in a relationship, small, almost trivial, trigger outsized reactions in you? A delayed response, a change in tone, a cold glance. And suddenly, you're not just hurt. You're panicked, disoriented. You feel like you're 5 years old again. This isn't immaturity. This is memory. Emotional memory lives in the body. Long before you can explain what's happening, your nervous system remembers what it once meant to feel ignored, rejected, dismissed, or unsafe. And relationships, especially close, intimate ones, have a way of awakening that memory, not because your partner is your parent, but because they now occupy the same emotional territory, the power to make you feel safe or invisible. Unfinished emotional business. Most people think they're reacting to the present, but often they're reacting to the past, repeating it in a different outfit. This is why emotional triggers feel so overwhelming, because they carry layers of old pain that have never been named, much less healed. What you think is about this person not texting you back might really be about what it meant to be left waiting as a child. What you think is about your partner's criticism might actually be about how nothing was ever enough growing up. The mind is clever. It uses the present to reenact the past, hoping unconsciously for a different ending. But without awareness, we don't rewrite the story. We just keep casting new people into old roles and calling it fate, regressing under pressure. This is why, under relational stress, many adults regress emotionally. They withdraw suddenly. They lash out. They beg, chase, collapse. They build walls and throw tantrums. Not because they're childish, but because they've never learned another way to feel safe when love feels threatened. And often, their partner is just as bewildered, because what's being expressed doesn't match the current moment. That's because it isn't about the current moment. It's about every other moment that still lives unprocessed in the heart. Your partner is not your parent. One of the greatest shifts in emotional maturity comes when you stop expecting your partner to do what your caregivers couldn't. They are not here to re-raise you. They are not responsible for proving you're enough. They are not here to be endlessly patient with wounds they didn't inflict. Yes, relationships can be healing, but they are not therapy. They are mirrors. And if we're honest, most of us don't want love. We want correction of a story we never chose but still carry. But your healing is not your partner's job. It's yours. When you take ownership of that, everything changes. You stop making them the villain in your replayed childhood. You start relating to them as an adult, not as a frightened child in search of rescue. The child within still speaks. Still, this doesn't mean the child inside you disappears. That part of you, the one that still longs to be held, to be reassured, to be chosen, deserves tenderness. But not from someone else first. From you. The path forward is not to shame that child. It is to listen, to hold them gently, to say, I see you. I know what you went through, but you're not alone anymore. I am here now. This is the beginning of wholeness, not in finding someone who never disappoints you, but in becoming someone who doesn't abandon yourself when others do. The role of responsibility. Healing begins the moment you stop pointing outward and start looking inward. It's tempting to believe that your pain is someone else's fault, that your emptiness exists because someone didn't love you enough, that if only others had stayed, validated, understood, you wouldn't feel so fragmented. But here's the truth. What happened to you may not be your fault, but healing from it, that is your responsibility. This isn't about self-blame. It's about reclaiming your power. Because as long as you assign the burden of your wholeness to another person, whether a partner, a parent, or a friend, you remain emotionally disempowered. You wait. You react. You build your sense of peace on someone else's stability. And when they falter, you collapse. That's not love. That's spiritual dependency. Responsibility is not the same as isolation. Taking responsibility for your inner world doesn't mean you go it alone. It doesn't mean you never lean on others, or that you should never feel disappointed or afraid. It simply means this. You stop expecting others to do the emotional labor you've been avoiding. It means you learn to Regulate your nervous system without needing immediate reassurance. Communicate your needs clearly instead of expecting others to guess. Recognize your patterns and name your triggers so you don't act them out unconsciously. Sit with discomfort without immediately seeking distraction, sedation, or validation. This is what mature love requires. Not perfection, but ownership. Not dominance, but clarity. Love is not a repair project. When we confuse love with healing, we start to believe that relationships exist to fix us. That someone else will make up for the past. That the right partner will finally close the wound. But no matter how kind, attentive, or patient they are, your partner cannot do the healing work that only you can do from within. They can offer support. They can walk beside you, but they cannot make you feel worthy. That is your sacred task. And when you take it seriously, the entire nature of your relationships changes. You no longer enter them to fill a void. You enter with something to offer, something grounded, intentional, free. You are not at the mercy of your past. The most liberating truth is this: you are not doomed to repeat the patterns that hurt you. You are not cursed by your attachment style. You are not fated to destroy what you love. But change won't happen through insight alone. It requires choice, daily, even hourly. It requires you to stay present when every cell in your body wants to run, to pause instead of lash out, to speak your truth even when your voice trembles, to comfort the child within you without turning your partner into a surrogate parent. This is the essence of responsibility, not just managing your behavior, but knowing the why behind it and choosing not to pass that pain forward. Loving from strength, not scarcity. When you take ownership of your inner landscape, something powerful begins to emerge. You stop begging. You stop chasing. You stop performing. You start relating. You begin to love not because you need to be rescued, but because you have something sacred to give. You can say, "I am responsible for my healing. I do not expect you to fix what you did not break, but I welcome you to walk with me, honestly, patiently, and freely." That's love from strength, not scarcity. From clarity, not confusion. From abundance, not hunger. And that kind of love, it lasts. Real love requires structure. Love is often mistaken for a feeling, something that washes over you unexpectedly. Something you either have or don't. But real love, the kind that sustains, strengthens, and sanctifies, requires far more than chemistry or connection. It requires structure. Without emotional structure, love cannot last. It may flare with passion. It may intoxicate with intensity. But it cannot hold under pressure. Structure is what allows two people to navigate the chaos of life together without unraveling. It's the scaffolding that holds intimacy when feelings shift, tempers flare, or the glow of infatuation fades. What does structure really mean? Structure in love doesn't mean rigidity or control. It means capacity. The capacity to hold your own emotional weight, to communicate with clarity, to stay when it's easier to run, to pause when it's tempting to react, to speak truth, even when it's awkward. It means you've built the internal discipline to love someone even when you don't feel like it, even when they disappoint you, even when life stretches both of you to your limits. In spiritual terms, it's what St. Paul described in 1 Corinthians 13, not love as a feeling, but love as patience, kindness, perseverance, humility. Why most love collapses without it. When love lacks structure, relationships are governed by emotion alone. If I feel connected, I stay. If I feel triggered, I withdraw. If I feel insecure, I demand proof. If I feel bored, I chase a new high. This is love as impulse, not intention. And while it may seem romantic on the surface, it leads to cycles of instability. Love cannot grow where there is no container for discomfort. It needs something stronger than mood, chemistry, or desire. It needs the kind of maturity that can stand still when everything inside you wants to escape. Structure comes from the inside first. People often say, "I just haven't met the right person yet." But maybe the deeper question is, have I become the kind of person who can hold real love when it arrives? Because structure isn't something you build with another. It's something you build in yourself. Before love begins, it's the habits of emotional hygiene, the quiet inner scaffolding of honesty, boundaries, self-awareness, and faithfulness to your own values. With structure, you no longer rely on your partner to keep things stable. You bring stability to the relationship by the way you show up. Consistent, compassionate, centered. Love without structure is like fire without a hearth. Imagine a fire. It brings warmth, beauty, power. But without a hearth to contain it, it spreads wildly. It burns what it was meant to warm. It consumes what it was meant to nourish. That's what love without structure does. It rages with passion. But it can just as easily become destructive. Structure is the hearth. It's the frame that allows love to burn safely, sustainably, and sacrificially. And the good news? Anyone can build it. It's not gifted to the lucky few. It's forged through practice, through choice, through doing the hard work of emotional formation, sometimes alone, often quietly, and always with courage. The fear of being truly known. Many people don't fear love. They fear being seen. To be truly known is to be exposed. Not just your beauty, but your insecurities. Not just your strength, but your shame. And if you've spent a lifetime managing how others see you, through performance, through perfection, through control, then real intimacy will feel terrifying. It's not that you can't love, it's that you've trained yourself to only show the version of you that feels safest. And so when someone tries to love the parts you've hidden, you flinch. You push them away, or you perform harder. The tragedy is, you want to be loved, but you won't allow yourself to be seen. This is why so many relationships feel shallow or unsatisfying. Because love cannot land on a mask. It can only land on truth. And until you make peace with your own rawness, you will continue hiding behind curated versions of yourself, hoping someone will fall in love with a persona while secretly aching to be embraced for who you really are. You cannot offer what you don't have. You cannot pour from an empty cup. And you cannot offer safe, steady love if you have not built that safety within yourself. So many people enter relationships hoping to prove their worth. But love is not a reward for being good enough. It's an overflow of who you are when you've stopped trying to earn it. When you haven't faced your inner wounds, your love becomes conditional. You give to get. You care with expectations. You attach with anxiety. But when you've done the work, when you've sat with your loneliness, your longing, your fears, something shifts. Love becomes a gift, not a test. Presence becomes enough. You can hold another's emotions without absorbing or fearing them. This is what makes love sustainable. Not just chemistry, but emotional capacity. And that capacity is not something you're born with. It's built. It's chosen. It's practiced, especially in the moments you feel most tempted to collapse, chase, or run. Freedom begins where need ends. Need is loud. It clings. It begs. It makes you believe that unless someone chooses you, you have no value. But love, real love, can only breathe in freedom. You may still want connection. You may still long for closeness. But when you are no longer dependent on it for your sense of self, something miraculous happens. You begin to choose love instead of chase it. You stop shrinking to be accepted. You stop performing to be chosen. You stop collapsing when things become uncertain. And in that freedom, you finally become safe for love. Not just to feel, but to hold. Not just to receive, but to give. You stop asking, will someone love me enough to complete me? And you start declaring, I already am whole. And from that place, I choose to love. This is where it all begins.